Hi there, and welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today we are going to make a yogurt recipe, homemade yogurt in the Ninja Foodi, 2 ingredients. It's super easy, and let me show you how to do it. So the first thing I have here is 1 gallon of vitamin D milk. Now you can use skim milk, 1%, 2%, or vitamin D. I just happen to like the flavor and the consistency of the yogurt when I use the vitamin D milk. I am using my 8-quart Ninja Foodi, but that does not matter. As long as your Ninja Foodi has the dehydration function, you can make this yogurt. Now, I'm sorry, guys, if you don't have the dehydration function, I have not figured out how to make yogurt without using this function. So I'm real sorry about that. I will keep trying though. So what we want to do is go ahead and put in our full gallon of milk. Now, if you didn't want to make a full recipe, you could also just do a half of a gallon. Okay, and we're going to turn on the sear saute, and we'll make sure it's on high and hit the start button. So the only things that you need to make homemade yogurt in the Ninja Foodi is, number 1, the dehydration function. So I have not figured out how to make this without the dehydration function. So sorry for those of you that don't have that feature. You can make it in the 8-quart or the 6.5 quart. I'm just using the 8-quart today to give it a little bit of use, since I test most of my recipes and use the 6.5 so much more often. The other thing you need to have is a yogurt starter. Now you could buy yogurt from the store. Any kind of yogurt with active cultures will be fine. But what I find to be easier and more economical is I freeze some of the yogurt from the previous batch. And I do that just using this ice cube tray, which I will link to below for you guys. And they're about 1/4 to 1/2 cup, and I just freeze them. So you can freeze 1, 2, 3, 4, however many. I froze a whole bunch from the last batch, just so I don't have to worry about freezing it again in case I forget. And these are good for 6 months. I know that because I just used one from 6 months ago to make yogurt. So that is a great tip. I mean, who wants to buy yogurt to make yogurt? That doesn't make sense to me. So freeze it, it works great. The only thing you do need to remember is you want to bring it to room temperature. So definitely get it out of the freezer. It makes no difference that it gets a little runny. That won't matter. You just want to bring it to room temperature and have it completely thawed. The other thing that you really do need is a thermometer. Doesn't have to be fancy, anything like that. Just something that's going to let you know when the milk heats up to 181, because that is just pre-boil, okay? So we're not going to let it totally boil. And you also need to know when it cools down to the right temperature, so a thermometer. And that's it, guys. And as soon as this comes up to 181, then we'll start to cool it down. We'll add in the culture and we'll get it incubating. So the milk's been heating for probably about 15 minutes, and I'm starting to see some steam coming up. So now it's real important to stir, pretty frequently, because when it starts to steam, we're getting close to that 181, and that's when the milk could scorch and stick to the bottom. If it does, it's not the end of the world. You just don't want to stir your yogurt at the end and stir those little brown parts in. Give it a good stir and then put in your thermometer. Now, I have the world's slowest thermometer, which I am looking into upgrading and getting a better one. So if you guys have any ideas on what is a great and economical thermometer, I am all ears. Even though I stirred, I also kind of move the thermometer around a little bit so that I'm sure I'm not in a hot pocket or a cold pocket. So I'm getting an accurate temp. And it's coming up. We're at 137 now. So I'm probably guessing that this is going to top out at about 145, which means we have a little bit more time to go until it hits the 181. Now you can go anywhere between 181 and 200, but you don't want to get above 200 degrees. Your milk is going to definitely scorch at that point, and you could even have some aftertaste that just aren't that great. So it is at 145 now. It's climbing still, so we're actually going to go a little bit higher than that, but it's not getting up to the 181 yet, and I didn't think it would. Because we probably have about 5 or 10 more minutes. So I'm just going to keep stirring this, probably every minute or so, or every 2 minutes, so that it doesn't scorch to the bottom. And then we'll get it cooling down. And there's a couple ways you can do that. You can just let it cool naturally, which I do most of the time, just because I get into other projects and I just let it go for a couple hours. Or you can put it in an ice bath, and that's what I'm gonna do today. So I'm gonna put some ice and some cold water in the sink, and I'm going to put this whole pot in the sink to do more of a rapid cool. All right, we just hit 180 and a half. So we are just about at 181, and we just hit 181. What happens just before we hit that temperature of 181 is you'll notice some bubbles forming on the top of the milk, and it gets a little bit frothier. So you'll be able to tell, and then I stir constantly during that time so that I don't scorch, and it doesn't feel like anything scorched to the bottom, so we're good to go. And it's hit 181, so now we can do the cool down process. And like I said before, you could do this a couple of different ways. You could just simply leave it in here, stir it around every 15 minutes, and let it cool naturally, and that takes about 2 hours. We only need it to get down to about 110. Or you can do what I'm gonna do today, which is a rapid cool, and I put probably about 6 cups of ice in the sink, plugged it up, of course, and then I put cold water. So I've got a little ice bath in the sink. So I'm just gonna take out the inner pot and go pop it in the sink, and I'll check the temperature and stir about every 20, 30 minutes or so. And when it gets to 110, then we'll get it back in the Ninja Foodi and start the incubation period. All right, so the ice bath was so much quicker. I mean, literally, I think it came down to the 110 within 30 minutes. So that was a lot quicker. I usually just leave it alone, but it takes about 2 hours that way. So ice bath is real quick. So I just wiped off the sides of the pot because we're gonna put it back in the Ninja Foodi. So I don't want any moisture. And now we're gonna go ahead and put in our yogurt culture. Now you could stir this up if you want, but I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm just gonna dump it in. And the reason why we need to put in the yogurt culture is because there are active cultures in the yogurt itself that are going to replicate, duplicate, multiply, however you want to put it, and they're going to create our yogurt. So we want to make sure that we stir it in. Now you can use a little whisk, but remember, this is non-stick, so we don't want to use a metal whisk. But I usually just use the same spatula. I mean, why dirty something else? And just mix it around until I feel like it's really incorporated. And the reason why we have to bring the temperature down below 115, but I like to go to 110 just in case there's any hot pockets. I don't want any of the milk to be above 115 because it will kill that culture, and then you've wasted your time. You're not gonna make yogurt. So this is a definite needed ingredient. All right, so we're just gonna lift that back in. All right, so now what we need to do, and I guess I should probably say what I do because I have heard that a few people have forgotten to do this and it turned out just fine. So if you don't like using foil, go ahead and skip it. I just didn't want the heat from the dehydration fan to get like a crust on my yogurt. Of course, you could just skim that off too and it'd be fine. But I usually just put 1 piece of tin foil, which I use a brand name, so I don't use it from the dollar store because I don't know if it'd be thick enough. But I don't use heavy duty because I don't want it to be too thick. And this is just my preference. You don't have to do it this way. You can leave off the foil, like I said. People have been very successful for getting it. All right, so we're just gonna put that down. All right, so now we're going to allow the yogurt to incubate for at least 6 hours. I prefer mine to go 8 hours, but you could get away with 6 hours. I just think you get a little bit better yield with 8 hours of incubation. So you can make this up in the morning and then by, later in the day, it will be ready and you can put it in the refrigerator to chill. You can also do it overnight, but if you're gonna let it go longer than 8 hours, so let's say you're gonna incubate it, you wanna do it for 10 hours because you started it, 2 hours before you went to sleep or whatever. you will end up with a more sour yogurt, just so you know. So 6 hours is a pretty good tasting yogurt. 8 hours is where I absolutely love it. And then when you get into the 9th and 10th hour, it's just a little bit more sour to me. All right, so let's go ahead and set the dehydration, and we're gonna take that up to 180, and I'm gonna hit 8 hours. And then we're gonna hit start, and it's going to start the dehydration process, and we don't have to do anything during that time. I know people stay up with it and they check it all the time. You don't need to. Let it go. It's gonna do its thing and it's gonna be fine. And then when it's done, we'll take a peek at it and we'll get it in the fridge. So the yogurt dehydrated on 180 for 8 hours, and then it turns itself off, and that's great. So it's been off for a little bit of time, and that's no problem. I mean, the more it sits, the more it's gonna get sour, but it's fine. You know, I left it maybe 20, 30 minutes and no problems there. So I did check it at about hour 2, and it's complete liquid. So I know you're gonna do that the first time you make yogurt. Don't panic, it's fine, it's liquid. And then I got busy and I forgot about it, so I didn't check it after that. So here's the big reveal. Let's take a peek, and you know, even though I know the recipe works, I always do this. I always cross my fingers. All right, here we go. Yep, it's set up. So hopefully you can see there's a couple of cracks here, and that tells me that the yogurt made itself, basically. And there's some whey that I can see on the top and around the edges. So that's what comes out of the milk is the whey, and that's the liquid, and that's what we strain off to make Greek yogurt. Now, this is not cold yet, so it wouldn't be very delicious. I'm not gonna taste it, but I did want you guys to see the consistency that it is right now. So if I go under this little layer, and that is basically yogurt. So that is the regular traditional yogurt. And if this was cold, which it is not, so I'm not gonna taste it, this would be yogurt. I might strain a little bit off because it's a little bit loose. Of course, it will set up in the refrigerator, and that's why we're gonna refrigerate it. But this is yogurt, so we've made yogurt. Perfect. Now, I'm gonna refrigerate it and probably leave it overnight in the refrigerator. Now, you could just refrigerate it a couple of hours, but I'll probably leave it overnight because I've got some other stuff to do, and then we will see what happens with our yogurt. We'll get it strained, and we'll get to tasting. All right, so the yogurt has been in the refrigerator, and I left it in the refrigerator overnight just because that worked well for my schedule. But you can leave it in the refrigerator for about 4 to 5 hours until it cools down and sets up. Now, some people strain it right after they get it out of the Ninja Foodi, and that's fine too, but you're gonna get a little less yield that way. So I like to just take the time and let it set up, and then this is what it looks like. All right, so basically we have made yogurt. I mean, you can eat this yogurt right now. It is nice and thick. This is regular yogurt. I happen to like Greek yogurt, so what I'm gonna do is go do an extra step of straining it. That is the only difference between regular yogurt and Greek yogurt, is that the whey is strained out of it. So you do it the way you like it. If you like just regular plain yogurt, you are ready to eat it now. But for me, I like to strain it. So I have a really clean, these are these flour sacks that I use all the time, and I bleach them and they work beautifully. They work better than cheesecloth in my opinion. And I just have a strainer under here and a bowl. And the bowl's gonna collect the whey, and the flour sack is going to collect the Greek yogurt. All right, so I'm just gonna ladle this in. Looks beautiful. We got a very good yield from this yogurt. Of course, you don't have to make as large of a batch as I did. You can make a small batch. But I use it in so many things. This is set up beautifully. I like yogurt in the Ninja Foodi better than I do the Instant Pot, to be honest with you. The Instant Pot people think is a little bit easier to make yogurt because there's a yogurt button, but honestly, I got confused by it sometimes and didn't know if I was doing it right. This is just beautiful. Now, when the yogurt is warm and you go to strain it, you will see the whey start to pour out immediately. But what I found is it really reduces the yield quite a bit. So now, if you have something that you can hang this from, that's even better because the gravity will help get that whey out. Okay, so the whey is dripping out beautifully. It will be a clear to light yellow color, and you don't want to discard the whey. You can use it in a lot of recipes. You can use it instead of water making bread. You can use it in smoothies to add a little extra protein. So really, it's wonderful. So you just put it in the freezer until you want to use it. You can freeze them in individual little ice cube trays, or you can just put them in a big bag like I do, and then use them in various recipes. So we're gonna let this strain for as long as it needs to. So probably, an hour or so. And you can do that by just leaving it on the counter, or you can put it back in the refrigerator and let it strain, but it's just gonna take a little bit longer than it will if you just leave it out at room temperature. So all right, so we're gonna let this strain and then we will taste our Greek yogurt. All right, so I've been straining my yogurt for, maybe 2 hours, and a good amount of the whey has come out, and that's enough. I mean, I could still go longer if I wanted it thicker, but trust me, it's gonna be plenty thick. So you can see how much whey it produces. I mean, that's a good, I would say 4 cups. I haven't measured it, but 4 cups of the whey. And what I did to expedite the straining is I actually hung this on my cabinet so you can just make a little knot and hang it because the gravity really helps extract that whey a lot quicker. And then what we do is we just turn out our yogurt. It's very thick. So what I'm doing is just taking my scoop and spread, and I'm just sort of getting off any little bit, and then it'll just plop right out into your container. All right, perfect. Now this can go in the washing machine and be bleached. I think some of the instructions on the packaging say they can't be bleached. I've been bleaching them for years. So trust me, it works out fine. All right, so now we have our yogurt. So we have about, 6 cups of yogurt or so. That's our yield this time. It varies. Sometimes I get a little less, sometimes I get a little bit more. And I'm gonna make a strawberry parfait because I think that's gonna be a great treat this afternoon. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that set up. And I made some strawberry basil jam that I will link to that recipe video right up there because this pairs wonderfully with the yogurt. I don't sweeten my yogurt. Now, many people do, and you certainly can, but I don't. I add whatever sweeteners I'm gonna put on at the end because a lot of times I just like a little drizzle of honey and maybe a few nuts or granola or something like that. But today I'm going to indulge and have a little bit of this strawberry preserves. All right, so let's assemble our strawberry parfait. So I'm just gonna put a little bit in the bottom. And then we're gonna scoop in some yogurt. Let it fall down in there. There we go. A little bit more. I'm using about a teaspoon of the strawberry preserves. You don't need a lot. Another little layer there. Some strawberries on top. All right, there we go. Strawberry yogurt parfait. Perfect treat for the summertime. All right, let's give it a taste. Oh my goodness. Wow. It's so good. I mean, it's the sweetness of the preserves pairs perfectly with that just touch of sourness from the yogurt. It's thick and lush and creamy. Oh man, I could eat this every day. And really not feel guilty. I mean, I might have used a tablespoon of that preserves in the whole thing. And to be honest with you, I'm not gonna eat this whole thing. I could have made it half the size and been just as happy because it just tastes delicious, but it tastes delicious and it satisfies your sweet tooth. Yeah, this is a winner for sure. I hope you give this homemade yogurt a try. It might seem like it takes a long time, but it's such an easy process and the end result is so luxurious and so delicious. You just can't go wrong with this recipe. So I hope you give it a try. All right, this is a little secret here. So if you get one of these large ice cube trays, fill each one of these slots up, put them in the freezer. When they're frozen, pop them into a baggie. You have your yogurt starter for next time. No need to make yogurt by buying yogurt at the store. Make it with what you already have.